Chapter 17. He continues on the unhappy method of training youth in literary subjects. Bear with me, my God, while I speak a little of those talents thou hast bestowed upon me, and on what follies I wasted them. For a lesson sufficiently disquieting to my soul was given me, in hope of praise, and fear of shame or stripes, to speak the words of Juno, as she raged and sorrowed, that she could not, Latium bar, from all approaches of the Dardan king, which I had heard Juno never uttered. Yet were we compelled to stray in the footsteps of those poetic fictions, and to turn that into prose which the poet had said in verse. And his speaking was most applauded, in whom, according to the reputation of the persons delineated, the passions of anger and sorrow were most strikingly reproduced, and clothed in the most suitable language. But what is it to me, O my true life, my God, that my declaiming was applauded above that of many who were my contemporaries and fellow students? Behold, is not all this smoke and wind? Was there nothing else, too, on which I could exercise my wit and tongue? Thy praise, O Lord, thy praises might have supported the tendrils of my heart by thy scriptures. So had it not been dragged away by these empty trifles, a shameful prey of fowls of the air. For there is more than one way in which men sacrifice to fallen angels. Chapter 8. Men desire to observe the rules of learning, but neglect the eternal rules of everlasting safety. Chapter 18, But what matter of surprise is it that I was thus carried toward vanity, and went forth from thee, O my God, when men were proposed to me to imitate, who, should they in relating any acts of theirs, not in themselves evil, be guilty of a barbarism or solecism, when censured for it, became confounded. But when they made a full and ornate oration in well-chosen words concerning their own licentiousness and were applauded for it, they boasted. Thou seest this, O Lord, and keepest silence, long-suffering, plenteous in mercy and truth, as thou art. Wilt thou keep silence forever? And even now thou drawest out of this vast deep the soul that seeketh thee and thirsteth after thy delights, whose heart said unto thee, I have sought thy face, Lord, will I seek. For I was far from thy face, through my darkened affections. For it is not by our feet, nor by change of place, that we either turn from thee or return to thee. Or, indeed, did that younger son look out for horses, or chariots, or ships, or fly away with visible wings, or journey by the motion of his limbs, that he might, in a far country, prodigally waste all that thou gavest him when he set out? A kind father when thou gavest, and kinder still when he returned destitute. So then, in wanton, that is to say, in darkened affections, lies distance from thy face. Behold, O Lord God, and behold patiently, as thou art wont to do, how diligently the sons of men observe conventional rules of letters and syllables, received from those who spoke prior to them, and yet neglect the eternal rules of everlasting salvation received from thee, insomuch that he who practices or teaches the hereditary rules of pronunciation, if contrary to grammatical usage, he should say without aspirating the first letter, a human being, will offend men more than if, in opposition to thy commandments, he, a human being, were to hate a human being. As if, indeed, any man should feel that an enemy could be more destructive to him than that hatred with which he is excited against him. Or that he could destroy more utterly him whom he persecutes than he destroys his own soul by his enmity. And of a truth, there is no science of letters more innate than the writing of conscience, that he is doing unto another what he himself would not suffer, How mysterious art thou, who in silence dwellest on high, thou God, the only great, who by an unwearied law dealest out the punishment of blindness to illicit desires. Blindness to illicit desires. When a man seeking for the reputation of eloquence stands before a human judge while a thronging multitude surrounds him, inveighs against his enemy with the most fierce hatred, he takes most vigilant heed that his tongue slips not into grammatical error, but takes no heed lest through the fury of his spirit he cut off a man from his fellow men. These were the customs in the midst of which I, unhappy boy, was cast. On that arena it was that I was more fearful of perpetrating a barbarism than, having done so, of envying those who had not. These things I declare and confess unto thee, my God, for which I was applauded by them whom I then thought it my whole duty to please. For I did not perceive the gulf of infamy wherein I was cast away from thine eyes. For in thine eyes that was more infamous than I was already, displeasing even those like myself, deceiving with innumerable lies both tutor and masters and parents, from love of play, a desire to see frivolous spectacles, and a stage-struck restlessness to imitate them. Pilferings I committed from my parents' cellar and table, either enslaved by gluttony, or that I might have something to give to boys who sold me their play, who, though they sold it, liked it as well as I. In this play, likewise, I often sought dishonest victories, I myself being conquered by the vain desire of preeminence. I cheated, in other words. And what could I so little endure, or if I detected it, censured I so violently as the very things I did to others? And when myself detected I was censured, preferred rather to quarrel than to yield. This is the innocence of childhood? Is this the innocence of childhood? Nay, Lord, nay. Nay, Lord. I entreat thy mercy, O God. For these same sins, as we grow older, are transferred from governors and masters, from nuts and balls and sparrows, to magistrates and kings, to gold and lands and slaves, just as the rod is succeeded by more severe chastisements. I'm on board here. I experienced this as well as a child, but I see no natural connection between these things, misdirected as they are, and the cry of a child for his mother's breast. There's no comparison between those two. And the mystery of iniquity is how the fear of death manifests itself in sin after the child has become aware of it, and thus diminishment becomes something to be avoided at all costs. But that's really what he's fleeing from here, is diminishment. And what he's fleeing into in gluttony is a lostness in food, or a lostness in the stories of others. But there's a way of being lost in the stories of others that is more like mother's milk than it is like wanting to win in a game. And I feel like this difference in orientation or trajectory of the desire is lost in his writing. But yet, O Lord, to thee most excellent and most good, thou architect and governor of the universe, thanks had been due unto thee, our God, even hadst thou willed that I should not survive my boyhood. For I existed even then. I lived and felt and was solicitous about my own well-being, a trace of that most mysterious unity from whence I had my being. I kept watch by my inner sense over the wholeness of my senses, and in these insignificant pursuits, and also in my thoughts on things insignificant, I learned to take pleasure in truth. I was averse to being deceived. I had a vigorous memory, was provided with the power of speech, was softened by friendship, shunned sorrow, meanness, and ignorance. In such a being, what was not wonderful and praiseworthy? But all these are gifts of my God. I did not give them to myself, and they are good, and all these constitute myself. Good, then, is he that made me, and he is my God, and before him will I rejoice exceedingly for every good gift which as a boy I had. For in this lay my sin, not that in him, but in his creatures, myself and the rest. I sought for pleasures, honors, and truths, falling thereby into sorrows, troubles, and errors. And that's true. And if you don't seek God first of all, or as the highest, then pleasures bring sorrow, honors bring trouble, and truths sought for in others bring error. Thanks be to thee, my joy, my pride, my confidence, my God. Thanks be to thee for thy gifts. But preserve thou them to me. For thus wilt thou preserve me. And those things which thou hast given me shall be developed and perfected. And I myself shall be with thee. For from thee is my being.